Hey there, Pirate Monkey Crew, and welcome to the very first tutorial that we are doing in the new studio. I want to start off just by thanking all of you so much for your support. That's really what's let me get to where I am right now in this new studio, and I really appreciate your patience. I know that it's been a little while with getting this all set up, and I apologize for the delays. But without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into what we're going to be working on. We're going to be painting the Blood Reaper. Now this is a fantastic model from Kimeta Models, and they're one of our new sponsors, and I'm going to be, over the next few months, I'm going to be showing off some of these sponsors' figures, because I think that they're fantastic, and they are just really, really great material to actually show you techniques and methods and so on and so forth. This also marks kind of a new phase that we're going to be going into with the Patreon, because we've covered a lot of the basics. A lot of the basics have been covered, and essentially what I would like to do now is start to get into more of the specific details, how to finish models, how to concept models, and so on and so forth. So with that being said, I want to talk a little bit about my process and my creative process before we jump into this one and really rough out some more of these things. And I may be putting some images in here just to kind of show you guys where I go to look for resources and so on and so forth, and kind of what I'm thinking about when I start new projects. So the first thing is that I always kind of start off with a vague idea or a vague atmosphere, something like that. The Blood Reaper is a very piratey figure, I guess it would be the best way to put it. So that's usually where I start, and I'll go to places like ArtStation, Putty and Paint, anywhere where I can find just a dense amount of really high quality artwork for me to reference and start to get even more of a feeling of atmosphere and technique and genre that I really want to work, because we can go in a whole bunch of different directions, and sometimes I don't even know where I'm going until I get into the project, to be completely honest, and that's completely okay. So I will pick one or more things to do, right? The first is I will use my reference image, and I will kind of just get a general feeling about the miniature, and I'll have that reference image just right there with me. The second thing that I'll do is I'll just paint my favorite part of the miniature. I'll paint the part of the miniature that I think is the coolest, because that gets me involved with the miniature, and while I'm painting that part, I'm not only painting that part, I'm envisioning what I'm going to be doing with the rest of the miniature. And so I would invite you and ask you to try out this method or this style of thinking when you're starting your next projects. It's what has worked very well for me, and I hope that it works very well for you. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and hop over and finally start painting now. I know you're probably sick of me talking and being a talking head, but yeah, we're going to paint the Blood Reaper. We're going to start off by painting his cloak, and we're going to be using a reference image to kind of get a rough idea of atmosphere and color, because it's really in line with what I want, and I hope you guys enjoy this next part. Hey there everybody, and welcome to this first part. So again, we have our palette cam, that's going to be right up here. And of course we have our miniature, we have the Blood Reaper right here. It's a pretty cool miniature. I've been really excited to paint it for quite some time, ever since I reviewed it, and yeah, so let's go ahead and get to it. So I also want to show you a bit of the reference image. I found this really great image on ArtStation. It's a lich. I really like the colors, essentially, is really what it came down to. I had the idea to do this turquoise, and sometimes you just need a little bit of a push to really completely get there. So I'll have the information of where I got this down below, in the description. So but yeah, over here I have my colors. Of course, this is always just inspired. That's why I say reference. We're not doing a study of this entirely. We're just kind of using this to it's like get an idea, I guess would be the best way to say it. Completely different topics. I'm going to show you guys the colors that I have and that we're going to be using and that I used to get this base coat. So to get the base coat, I used Flat Earth and Emerald. And these are both fantastic colors from Vallejo. To highlight it, we are going to use Ghost White, and then to shade it, we are going to use Nightshade Purple. So I'm going for a little bit of saturation without it being too saturated. And of course here you can see we have this kind of like nice layer consistency, and I'm starting off with a black base coat this time, really just because I feel like it. It's going to help me keep things a little bit more desaturated, I think, and yeah, let's go ahead and start to get a base coat down. This is something that you guys have all seen a million and one times, so I'm not really going to talk through it too much. I may even speed it up. Using my Winsor & Newton Series 7 size 3 right now. Of course, this figure, just like most of Key-Meta and Mindwork miniature games miniatures are, is 75mm. So this is a big guy. I had a lot of you guys requesting leather, and we're going to do some leather, but we need to get through this first phase of really getting this, getting these base coats and everything down, and I am going to show that to you though. So with these base coats, the one thing that I'm trying to be aware of is getting it all down while it's wet, and just making sure that we're connecting these wet parts, because if we let something dry, it can really, it can kind of mess with us when we are trying to get a nice solid coat. And that's really what I'm going to set out to do here. And it's just a good way to start in general with these pieces, is just to get a really, really nice, really solid base coat. And this can take, you know, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 layers. And you want to just make sure that they're thin, because it's going to help you maintain the details that are there. What we're going to do is we're going to take just a big old helping of emerald, and we're going to just start to mix in some of this flat earth. Now, it doesn't really need to be perfect. If this mix is different than our last mix, then that's completely okay. They don't need to be exactly the same. And that's kind of the fun thing, the thing that I enjoy the most about painting these larger figures, is that I really actually welcome this level of nuance. And sometimes, you know, you may get a little ways in and go, I think that's too saturated, and you know, just come back to the palette, mix some more of it. There's nothing wrong with mixing in a little bit more or changing your mind, and you're allowed to. It's your miniature, it's your adventure, it's, you know, how you're gonna spend this time to enjoy what you're doing. And for me, you know, I try not to put pressure on myself with this. It's more just about sitting back and going, how, you know, it's like a puzzle for me. That's how I think of it. It's like sitting down and with a 1,000-piece, you know, jigsaw puzzle and starting to put the pieces together. You have to start somewhere, and sometimes, you know, what you think is the bottom left corner might be the top right. And so, but that's part of the fun of it for me. Just make sure that you're enjoying what you're doing, because I would hate to see you guys, you know, not enjoying what you're doing. I'm gonna kind of pick a touch point. Usually it's their head, so that's what I'm gonna stick with. Just gonna go on for the second round here. Again, you guys know what I'm doing at this point. What I would say as well during this part is start envisioning the model. Really start to think about how, you know, you want the rest of the model to look, what colors you want to use, how you want to use them. Do you want to do zenithal highlighting, or do you want to do you know, some kind of ambient lighting. You know, he has that lamp. You could paint the entire miniature as if he's being painted by the lamp. You know, I'm making a statement here by giving him a turquoise, like a dyed turquoise leather coat. It means that he's a very colorful character, maybe a little bit crazy. You know, he's not the normal pirate. Like he's gonna have these little monkey creatures on him, and so the whole thing is about making decisions. There's this funny quote from The Office, and Michael Scott says, he says, sometimes I just start saying something and I have no idea where I'm going with it. That's okay. That's okay to do with art sometimes. Sometimes it's nice because it lets your subconscious decisions come through. And we're getting a little bit philosophical or artsy here, but this is kind of the stuff that I think about and that I'm passionate about. And so, you know, when you let those subconscious decisions come through, it's you're kind of letting your mind and your creative part of yourself maybe take control. Now, this is what works very well for me. I know not everybody is like that. Some people are a little bit more structured or a little bit more literally minded. And that's why I talked about pulling reference and why reference can be important. It's nice to have something in front of you where you can kind of go, okay, I see this and this and this, and you know, you can even pull that image into Photoshop and color pick you know, colors just to kind of see what's where and how and why, and build up that palette so that you really are getting a good idea. And that's going to be something that we're going to do in the future, is actually do a full study of either a miniature or, you know, an illustration of some sort, because it's important to have an idea about colors, and it's a very good way to learn very quickly. But that's not what we're doing here today. This is just more of a this time when we're using this reference, it's more just to have a color idea than anything. As you can see, we have a really nice solid base coat. You can also tell that Vallejo is very satin because it has a lot of sheen to it. This is also kind of good though, because it lets us observe a couple of things. It lets us observe the way that the highlights are going to be on the material. We can see we have one right here. Then we also have one in here. And what's happening is there's a couple of things. So of course you have your cylinder, right? And if the light source is coming from here, that's where the highlight is going to be, is on this point. If we have a cylinder though that's been cut in half, right? The highlight is going to be in here. And so there's like this convex and concave type of highlights, and both are important to understand. And that's sometimes you see it being denoted on miniatures that are male miniatures that are very muscular, and female miniatures, you know, with their bust, where there's a highlight that goes down the center line near the sternum, and that's why artists tend to include that. So but what we're going to be doing right now is we're going to start the gradual just a gradual shadowing of this. And so as you can see, I mixed a really big batch of this right here off camera, and we're going to very slowly start to include in some of this Reaper tone. And so